Hey everyone, welcome back to Total War Warhammer 2. We're going to be looking at doing like a first look at all the races in Warhammer 2. So I've had a little over a week playing each of the 4 races, so I'm going to give a brief overview of how I think they play out and how I think they should be played out. So we're going to be starting off with the Dark Elves. So the Dark Elves don't really seem to have a clear strength, I guess you'd call it, or a clear weakness. They've got kind of a bit of everything. Maybe one of their strengths would be spells, because Malekith has quite a number of spells and options available to him. He can be on his dragon down here, which gives them quite a lot of air prowess too. They can get some air prowess if they need it. Black dragons, harpies, and then also Malekith on his dragon if need be. But they are quite spell oriented, I would say. They've got some really strong spells like Blade Wind, Doombolt's okay. Chillwind's not that great for Malekith, but they also have a lot of other spellcasters. As you can see down here, a Dark spellcaster, Fire spellcaster, Shadow. Then they've got the Death Hag, who's a bit like an army buffer, generally, depending on whether she's mounted or not. As you can see here, when she's mounted on a Cauldron of Blood, she gets a lot of buffs to her armies, but when she's not, she's quite a good anti-infantry hero. So, yeah, Dark Elves are pretty good in the spell department, magic department, winds of magic, and then they have some decent infantry as well. So they've got their basic bleak swords, so that's just like your custom shield, sword, infantry to make up a sturdy line in your front row, your infantry line. Then they've got the Black Ark Corsairs and the Witch Elves, who are pretty good anti-infantry, not armor piercing. So once again, they're not great at taking out armor piercing. They are good anti-infantry with low armor. They don't have a lot of armor themselves. Well, a couple of their higher levels do, like their Great Swords infantry. So they're probably the ones you would use. They're the ones that have armor piercing, so they're the ones you're going to use if you need to take out heavily armored infantry. Same with the Black Guards of Naggaroth. That's probably their main anti-monster, anti-large dealer. Their Blackguard of Naggarond. Then they've got a number of missile infantry as well. So we have like a combined missile infantry and melee. So they don't have any clear standouts that are just absolutely awesome skirmishers. Maybe the Dark Shards if need be, but they're Black Ark Corsairs, Shades, and Shades dual wielding are their main missile infantry. And they are also melee infantry, as you can see here. So, as you can see here, they go up in their melee damage, and the Great Swords get their armor piercing, but they also have armor piercing missile damage. So that's pretty good against heavy armor as well. So overall, they're pretty well-rounded. They've got a couple of cavalry too. Not superb cavalry, but medium all-round. So they've got the basically mainly shock cavalry, as you can see here. All of them being mainly charge bonus. Not a lot of... Oh, the Cold One Dread Knights, as you can see down there, have 48 weapon strength. So they're pretty good when you get them in and keep them in. But there is a bit of charge bonus going on here. So these being their shock cavalry, and these ones being a little more able to hold their own once they're actually into battle. Don't have to keep withdrawing them and charging them in, withdrawing, charging them in. They also have a chariot if you're going to use it. The thing is, yeah, it's not too bad. Their chariots. There's not a lot of great chariots. I think the best chariot in the 4 races would be the Skavens. Warp cannon, I think it's called. I'll have a look at them next. But comparing this to down here, as you can see, the charge bonus is a lot less, and this does quite a bit of damage, if need be, to other infantry. So it's quite a good anti-infantry chariot, I guess you'd call it. And it can not even charge into the infantry, it can just move around them, and it still keeps zapping them as it moves around. So they're not too bad overall. They got a little bit of everything, I'd say. Their artillery is not excellent, but it's not... They have some artillery. So the Reaper Bolt Thrower, it is similar to the High Elves Bolt Caster, or whatever it's called. It is used either to target infantry or heavy, so anti-large. It can change its firing position, as you can see here. It can go to a multi-shot round or a single-shot round. So the single-shot round being high damage to one target, and the multi-shot round being less damage but over multiple targets. So it shoots like 3 or 4 bolts instead of 1. So that's a little bit versatile for them if they want some artillery. And then they have some good monsters as well if they want to add them to their army repertoire. So we have the War Hydra, who can regenerate, does quite a bit of damage from a medium range with their fiery breath, and then can wade straight into battle with its 440 armor-piercing weapon strength. As you can see here, armor-piercing of 300, so it is absolutely beastly against any armoured units. Same for the Black Dragon here, has its Noxious Breath, which is similar to the War Hydra, and its Fiery Breath, so it can take out infantry fairly well with that from medium range, and then it can also wade into battle and take out armoured units. So any sort of monsters and beasts and heavily armoured infantry it is very good against. So that's the Dark Elves, kind of an all-overall race, average overall. I'd say one of their strengths, as I mentioned, was their magic, and then I'd say these shades are pretty useful. So they can be ranged and then also wade straight into combat and hold their own. Having, as you can see here with the Black Ark Corsairs, they've got their hand bows, which is their medium range, and they wade in with their single-handed weapon in their other hand. And they've got a reasonable amount of armor and reasonable melee defense, or kind of low melee defense, but reasonable attack strength. Yeah, as you can see here. Comparing them, they've got reasonable amounts, but the Witch Elves do end up getting quite a bit of extra damage with that frenzy that they can use. So they'll be an interesting race to play. Not to mention the murderous mastery that every one of their units gets when the battle gets to a certain point and they've killed so many units. Once they've reached that specific unit cap that they've killed, they get, all the army gets this superior buff. So towards the end of a battle, the Dark Elves actually increase in power, which can be kind of frightening, meaning that a lot of them also start causing, well, they get different powers from this murderous prowess, but they all get superior buffs, which is kind of crazy. You can imagine a War Hydra starting off as it is. Oh, okay, the monsters don't actually get it. That would explain. Okay, the monsters don't get it, but everything else does. That can be quite terrifying to know they've just gained 25% attack and everything like that. Okay, so moving on to the High Elves, the opposite in the Elven race. So the High Elves, compared to their Dark Brethren, they also have their magic, but it is more along the lines of, like with life, so healing, keeping things alive. They can still do some damage, but not quite as terrifying as the Dark Elves. They do have Teclis, who can be quite brutal with his spells as well. He doesn't have the large array of mounts, though, that Malekith has, so he can be a little easier to catch and kill. But some of his spells are not too bad. Flock of Doom can cause some damage to infantry. But as you can see here, a lot of it is sort of army buffing. The Net of Amantok is pretty good, though. You can use that to snare anything that you think might cause you major issues. So flying units that you want your supreme missile infantry to take out. So the very good combinations here. Nets of Amantok and their supreme missile infantry that the High Elves have. That is where I think the High Elves shine. Their missile infantry and then their cavalry. They've got quite good cavalry as well, with superior charge bonuses. Comparing these charge bonuses to the Dark Elves, you can see that even their highest charge bonus is about the average of the High Elves. See? Yeah, it's about the average units of the High Elves. And that's their highest charge bonus. So the shock cavalry of the High Elves is pretty good, pretty outstanding. They do have chariots if you want to use that kind of thing. They're not too bad in terms of their chariots, but once again you do have to be careful with them. I do like chariots, but generally only one, maybe maximum two in an army, because you do have to micromanage them constantly. Once again, they've got the simple artillery, so they've got the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, same kind of thing as the Dark Elves have, as I said. They can change it from single target to multi-target, so single target being to take out large units, and multi-shot being to take out masses of infantry. They get an ability called Martial Prowess, so this is the opposite of the Dark Elves, so they get defense and melee attack, whereas the Dark Elves get... where is it? Over here. I can't find it. Martial Prowess. Ah, here we go. So yeah, so they get melee attack and defense. There is more of a defensive trait that they get when their hit points drop below 50%. So yeah, that's quite good at protecting their units, I guess, but I think I prefer the damage boost, to tell you the truth. But as I was saying, they do have some strong infantry still, but they do cost a lot. So Phoenix Guard being quite a good anti-large spear unit, so they're halberd infantry, as you can see. They are very good against large, and also reasonably good against armoured. So one or two of them could be quite useful in to protect the flanks of your High Elf army. And then you've got your basic armor infantry, so armoured infantry that are going to take out heavily armoured infantry with their armour piercing. Then you've got your more basic white lines of trace, which are still armour piercing, so they're quite good at taking out armour pierced units. And then you got your basic spearmen infantry, which will mainly make up the bulk of your holding force. That's mainly what you're going to have in your front line. Spearmen, maybe with a couple of trace, white lines of trace. And then if you're really worried about maybe one swordmaster, maybe some of them, but then you're kind of limiting your ability for your cavalry and your infantry. I mean your missile infantry, which are absolutely beastly. So as you can see here, you've got your archers and your light archers. So archers being your basic unit. Then your archers with light armor give you a little bit extra defense if that's what you feel you need for that little bit of extra gold. And then you've got your Lotharan Sea Guard. So these are very interesting units. They are skirmishers, so they have lots of range. As you can see here, 165 range, 180 range. They're the longest range skirmishers or missile infantry out of the 4 races. So they're definitely superior in their missile infantry. And then they have spears as well. So they do have the ability to fight in melee. They can hold their own, but generally you want them to take out some stuff with range beforehand. You want them to use up all their ammunition and then wade them into battle. Same with the Lotharan Sea Guard. They've got shields, so they're even better. If you're going to skirmish against somebody, skirmisher versus skirmisher, Lotharan Sea Guard just kill everybody in terms of skirmishing because of that extra defense they get from their shields. As you can see here, shielded. 55% of all small arms missile fire hitting from the front will be blocked. So that is, you do not want to skirmish with Lotharan Sea Guard. Now, looking into their cavalry, we've got the basics here. Quite good charge bonuses. Not that great weapon strength though, so you don't want to leave them in battle. As you can see above, they are shock cavalry. Charge in, charge out. The chariot is where we get into some weapon strength. You can charge them in and then leave them in. They can hold their own, having 54 weapon strength and 110 armor. That is pretty good. But the charge bonus is just what you're looking for here. I think charging them in and out is the best option with them. But if they do get caught, they can hold their own still. Then you've got your missile cavalry. So you've got your Illyrian Reaver archers and your Tyrion chariot. So once again, the chariot being very good at, as you can see here, supremely good missile damage at 124, but that's going to be single target because there is only 4 units in this chariot here. So 4 units, 55 charge bonus. Okay, they're not quite as good. I would probably not go with the Tyrionic chariot. I'd go with the Ulthuan chariot because skirmishing cavalry just doesn't, unless you've got armor piercing, it just doesn't really work that well. Especially with only 4 units. I'd just avoid the Tyrionic chariot altogether. They do have air superiority. That is one thing the High Elves have. Major air superiority with their Great Eagle, and then also all the dragons and phoenixes they have access to. So the phoenixes being quite crazy in their own rights. They have ranged abilities themselves that they can use. So as you see here, Wake of Fire, powerful explosive ability. So they can use that once, I think. I'm not exactly sure. Can use that a couple of times, maybe. I think it relies on winds of magic, but I'm not exactly sure about that. And then we've also got the Frostheart Phoenix, who, when he wades into battle, he debuffs all the enemies in the area. So minus 10 armor piercing damage and minus 9 melee attack. And they also cause fear and terror. So these diving into battle will definitely make the High Elves a formidable force. So they do have their own rare monsters and beasts that can be a very big pain, being all flying. But in saying that, they can be shot down quite easily because of that. So if you have the, as we see here, bolt throwers or artillery that can target air units, archers, missile infantry, you can target down these guys and they will have some troubles. Once again, because these are dragons, they have their own fiery breaths, just like the Hydras had. So this one has Sun Dragon's Breath, this one has Moon Dragon's Breath, and then this one has Star Dragon's Breath. So all have their own different breaths that are very good against infantry. And then they have all their armor piercing as well. Major amounts of armor piercing, as you can see here. So they'll be very good against armoured infantry. Not so good against large, because they don't have a large bonus, but they can hold their own. Mainly infantry though. That's what I'd target with the dragons. Infantry, if you're going to go with them. So summing up once again, High Elves, okay holding infantry. If need be, you can go for the higher level stuff. 1 or 2 Phoenix Guard to deal with anti-large, if need be. Then we have excellent missile infantry, very good cavalry, and nice air superiority with their beasts. And an alright artillery. Moving on to the Lizardmen. Once again here, we've got quite a bit of magic going on with Mazdamundi, Slann Mage Priest in each of the areas. A little bit more on the healing, buffing side with their magic. Lord Mazdamundi does have Mount Zlak, so you can wade him straight into combat. He'll have tons of health with that. And also fear causing when you end up getting that. So that is very good to mount him. If you're going to take Mazdamundi, he basically needs his mount. So the summing up of Lizardmen is they are very beast, can be beast oriented or infantry oriented. So they've got a lot of infantry that can be very good. You've got your cheap skinks who you can just use as cannon fodder if you're going to go more towards the beast-oriented build. Or you've got some supporting beasts that are like artillery, like the Bastillodon, who you can use to support a more heavily armoured, damage-dealing infantry, depending on how you want to build them. Their main weakness is definitely their cavalry and their missile infantry. They have basically no missile infantry. Very, very cheap, easy to take out missile infantry, as you can see here. They do have poison damage though, so that is good. Debuffs the people they're attacking, but that's mainly all you're going to use them for the debuff. Maybe 1 or 2 of them to get some debuffs going. Can they move while... Yeah, they can fire whilst moving though, these ones. Skink skirmishers and chameleon skinks. So that could be good. That's one of the things that the Skaven have too. A number of missile infantry that can actually move while firing, which is very handy for skirmishing. infantry generally can't catch them. So if you can keep them away from cavalry, or protect them with, say, your Saurus spears or your temple guard, as you can see here, then they can put some hurt on infantry to let your infantry obliterate them, or your monsters obliterate them. So there are some options if you're not sure. There are some options with the missile infantry, but you're not going to take out an army with that missile infantry. They've got some cavalry, but they don't really have that higher charge bonus, so generally they're going to be staying in combat when you get them there. They're going to charge once, and I'd say then just stay there, because as you can see, the weapon strength is higher generally than their charge bonus. So yeah, that's something to take into account. They're not heavily cavalry oriented. They don't have any chariots either. That's something else to consider. But they're beasts. They are just beastly. So, feral Bastillodons, I would say, are almost a must in a Lizardman army. Charge them in and they just wreak havoc. Crap tons of armor, 140, and a lot of weapon strength. Absolutely awesome against infantry and also heavily armored infantry. Then we've got the Bastillodon with a Revivification Crystal. So this is like a supporting Bastillodon. He can actually heal people. So resurrects dead combatants and replenishes hit points of combatants. So that is very interesting. If you have a heavy infantry oriented build, maybe one or two of these, if you're going to do like a rush build, charge them in with your infantry and then they can heal you as you're going along. That could be an interesting build. We might have to try that out, see how it works. Then you've got your Croxagores, which are a monstrous infantry, adding to the infantry cohort. So these are pretty beastly in themselves. 84 melee strength or weapon strength. Extra verse infantry, extra armor piercing. Just all round crazy. So much fear causing units here, as you can see. So yeah, very wide range of beasts and infantry to choose from, with some supporting siege beasts. Where did the... Ah, yeah, here, like the Bastillodon. Yeah, missile monsters and beasts. Kind of interesting how you can build them out. Then we've got feral Stegodons. So comparing them to a feral Bastillodon, they have more health, more armor, more of it. Whoa, and a lot more weapon strength. So you are getting a bigger bang for your buck, but they are also going to be a bigger target because of that. So it's something you may want to consider. Maybe one feral Stegodon and two feral Bastillodons. I mean Stegodon. Because they can cause quite a bit of hurt against armored infantry. Not that great against large, so anti-large. So other beasts and monsters, not that great against them, but they do wreck infantry. Then we go to the feral Carnosaur. So he's less armored, but more of a charge bonus. So he also has Frenzy. So this is what makes the feral Carnosaur really good. And this is the anti-large too, as you can see here. So if you're worried about large units, like monsters and beasts, or cavalry and chariots, the feral Carnosaur is probably your go-to with the Lizardmen. One of your go-tos anyway. Other than maybe Temple Guard. And if need be, Saurus Warriors aren't too bad. But Feral Carnosaurs are really good against large units. As you can see here, 35 large. They will also be pretty good against heavily armoured infantry. I wouldn't throw them in against light infantry because they will wreck, but that's not where they're most suited. With this frenzy, when they drop below 50% leadership, they also get a massive boost to their damage. So that is very good when they get to low health. One of the special ability of the Lizardmen, or well, yeah, I guess you call it the special ability or the effect that they have, like the Dark Elves have that boost to damage and the High Elves have that boost to defense when they get to certain points. The Lizardmen have this rampage effect. So when they drop to a certain point, generally either when their leadership drops or their health drops to a certain percent, they go on a rampage. So this means that you lose control of the unit and they just start attacking whatever enemy is closest to them. They just charge and go absolutely berserk. So they can be a very interesting race to play. You need to make sure you've gotten your feral beasts and monsters into the battle so that they don't go crazy and run off on you. Now, going into the missile monsters and beasts. So this is a very interesting area. Nobody else, just having a look, yeah, nobody else has missile monsters and beasts. So this is specific to the Lizardmen. So we have our air units for the Lizardmen, the Pterodon Riders. So they are ranged monsters that are flying. They can shoot while moving too, so this could be quite difficult to deal with as somebody else, because they could get away from your skirmishers and still keep shooting your infantry at the same time and debuffing while doing that. That's actually not too bad for the cost. And then we also have the upgrade of the Pterodon Riders with Fire Leech Bowlers. So they have the normal attack that all of the Pterodon Riders have. So the armor piercing missiles, as you can see here. They lose the poison though and gain this drop rocks ability. So they can fly over large groupings of infantry or skirmishers and drop like fiery bombs on top of them. So that can be pretty good against massed groups of infantry and skirmishers. So that can be something you need to really look out for. Moving on to the Bastillodon with the solar engine. This is the main siege weapon of the Lizardmen. Other than this Bastillodon, they don't really... Oh, they've got the Ancient Stegodon. Okay, they do have a couple. Haven't actually seen how these ones work. But I do know that Stegodon fires one massive solar beam at the enemy. So it is fairly flat firing, so you can't fire it up and over a hill like the Skaven with their artillery. It is more of a flat plains artillery, and you want to target infantry with this one. It's In saying that though, it does do armor piercing, but I wouldn't use it to take out large units, because you're better off trying to hit a big massed group, because you got one shot and you don't want it to miss. It can also charge into battle like every other monster that the Lizardmen have, so use up all its ammunition, and then charge it straight into battle. And they are magical. Okay. Flaming attacks. Yeah. Oh, and their missile damage causes blinded. So that's pretty good too. Yeah, so infantry is definitely what you want to target with the Bastiladon. So, now looking at the Stegodon. He is armoured, quite armoured, along with most of the... Yeah, most of the Lizardmen are fairly heavily armoured. I don't think... Yeah. The only really unarmoured things are the skinks. So, lots of armour with Lizardmen. Quite similar to dwarves, actually. So you'll want to take that into account when you're taking on Lizardmen. Lots and lots of armour. So, as you can see here, he's got poison attacks. So, that is very good. Massive debuff to anything he hits. And he also has armor piercing. Cool. Quite a massive armor piercing attack there. 360 range to 240. So it does have a bigger range. Quite a bigger range, actually. More ammunition as well, but it is quite a lot more expensive. And a lot more weapon strength. So it might be good to take one of them, but you wouldn't be taking anything else if you took one of them. No other missile monsters, no other artillery. That would be the only artillery you would take. That singular one. Okay, then we've got the Ancient Stegodon, who you can compare to the normal Stegodon. It can fire while moving as well. Wow. Okay, I'm going to have to look at these in more detail. Okay, firing while moving. That is very good. It then has 328 more missile damage. Still has the poison damage, but it is no longer armor piercing. Okay. No longer armor piercing. And it's got 8 shots per volley. Whereas this one only has the 1 shot per volley. And this has the 1 shot per... Oh no, wait, I was looking here. Was I? No, I was looking here. Yeah, it only has the 1 shot per volley. Okay. So this one is definitely anti-infantry once again, with 8 shots per volley. So most of the artillery here is anti-infantry, not really anything anti-large. And they are pretty good once again in their melee as well. So once you've run out of ammo, charging them in is going to be what you want to do. Charging these guys into infantry is where you want to go. The armoured type. So there you go. Lots and lots of monsters to pick from the Lizardmen. Couple of cavalry, mainly to run them in and leave them in, because their charge bonus isn't that good. Not very much missile infantry. Mainly just used for their debuffs of poison. And then we've got a lot of infantry who are very good and heavily armoured. Maybe not as heavily armoured, maybe I should say medium armoured. Because they're not up around the hundreds, so yeah, medium armoured. And you've got quite a good range of either melee lords or some magic lords as well. Wizards. Okay, moving on to the final race, being the Skaven. So, the Skaven are a little bit different to everything else. They're kind of like a mix between dwarves and orcs. As you'll see here, they have a selection of wizards if you want to use them. Then they also have 2 melee lords. And then they've got a plague priest, which can be pretty good, using them to debuff and buff your army. So buff your army, debuff the enemy. And assassins for the duelists, so taking out other lords. And then you've got Ruin, which will be plague being summoning. So one of the major abilities of these wizards is that they can summon. Does Queek have the ability? No. They can summon, I'll show you here. Yeah, they can summon different rats into the battlefield, wherever they want. So you can basically summon them on top of artillery if you can get into range with them. So you can summon storm vermin, clan rats, just a number of different things. So that could be interesting in multiplayer. I believe the Lord has to be in a certain range though, so it could be limited depending on how much you're willing to risk in terms of your Lord dying. But going into their infantry, they're all very light armoured infantry, so you're not going to get much in terms of heavily armoured. Really the only armour they have in their infantry is their storm vermin with halberds and storm vermin with sword and shield. That's really the only armour you have, and that's kind of medium armour. And then the rest of it is all lightly armoured. So we've got slaves. I feel slaves are basically just cannon fodder. Not really useful for much at all, I would say. Except to die. Stop charges, I guess. Then you got the clan rats, which are a little better. You could use them as like a holding line if need be. But once again, they're not that great. They're kind of poor at a lot. Not too bad to hold, I guess. Then you've got your plague monks. This is where most of your infantry line is going to come from generally with the Skaven. So plague monks being major damage dealing anti-infantry. They're anti-light infantry though. You don't have a lot in the way of anti-heavy infantry. You can use the death runners. They're more heavy anti-heavy infantry with their armor piercing. So you're going to have to take that into consideration, whether you want your plague monks or your death runners. So as you can see, if you do go with the death runners, they are going to be more viable to dying. A lot easier to kill because of the fact that they've got 3,000 less health. And they do get a bonus to their damage though, but plague monks get this frenzy when they drop below 50% health, so that also boosts their damage when they get below 50%. So yeah, that's something you're going to need to consider. Lots of light infantry, lots of light missile infantry as well, but not that good missile infantry. They do have these night runners that can move and shoot at the same time, so they could be interesting in terms of being annoying, but they don't have a lot of damage, as you can see. They do have a large unit count though, so I have tried these out quite extensively in my Skaven campaign, and they did work pretty well for me against light infantry. So the light infantry would try to catch them and they'd just be torn to shreds. But if you come up against High Elves, your gutter runners would be absolutely destroyed by the missile infantry of the High Elves. So that's something to take into account. If you don't think there's going to be a lot of missile infantry, one or two of these gutter runners could be, or night runners could be quite useful in terms of annoying infantry. Annoying, slow, large units, things like that. But they don't do a lot of damage. And they can be taken out quite quickly. Then they do have some beasts, but not really a very big selection. They've got rat ogres, who are decent armor-piercing monsters. Then we've got the Hell Pit Abomination, which is basically your anti-large, anti-armored monster. It's fairly slow though, so you are going to have to take that into consideration. It does get these cool abilities though. Too horrible to die, so when your hit points are below 10%, you can pop this and it will either gain regeneration or die instantly and release a big group of Skaven rats that will come out of it and attack. So that's an interesting concept there. Yeah, so here, the rats emerge. Spawns a unit of Skaven slave spears. So when it dies, that's what happens. Skaven slave spears spew out of it. So that is kind of interesting. You're not going to charge this thing. It's just going to charge in once and then just stay there, stick. Because it doesn't have a lot of speed to get around the battlefield. And then we come to the main part of the Skaven. So they have lots of their infantry, which are good. They're plague monks, they're death runners. Maybe some storm vermin if you feel you need it. And then their artillery. So their artillery is beastly. Plague Claw catapults absolutely wreck infantry. As you can see here, lots of armor-piercing missile damage and explosive armor-piercing missile damage. And they also reduce leadership. So that is crazy. If you do not quickly get into battle with a Skaven army, this artillery will rip you to shreds if you have a large amount of infantry just standing around. Absolutely rip you to shreds, but it cannot get anywhere. It basically has to sit still and shoot. As soon as you get anywhere near it, it's just going to die. Then you've got the Warp Lightning Cannon. This is the siege equivalent for the Skaven of anti-large. So this is their main anti-large. They don't have a lot else that is anti-large, except for the Hell Pit Abomination. Maybe some spears, but they're not that great. Some Storm Vermin spears could be alright. And then the Plaguemont Censer Bearers are not too bad, but they're not really anti-large. Mainly... Oh, I forgot. The Warp Fire Throwers for the Missile Infantry. They are devastating to normal infantry. Absolutely devastating. One of these, any infantry charging at it is just dead. There's no way you can charge at a Warp Fire Thrower and live to tell the tale. It is going to kill you. So you need to be wary of that. Keep infantry away from Warp Fire Throwers. Take it out with something else, because it will die. Going back to the Warp Lightning Cannon, it is the anti-large, basically the only anti-large that they have, except for a little bit in their missile infantry, as you can see here with the wind globadiers. A little bit of anti-large there, but other than that, there's not a lot of anti-large other than the warp lightning cannon. Except for spears. But they're quite weak spears in saying that. You need a lot of them. And then you've got the... It only fires one bolt too. One missile. Not multiple. Then we've got the main attraction of the Skaven, the Doom Wheel. So this is a siege unit, medium range siege unit, so it can attack infantry from a medium range and blow it to smithereens. But it is also a chariot. So you can charge it through infantry and it will shoot Skaven lightning out of, or warp lightning I should say, out of the sides of it. So when you've got this thing zooming around the battlefield, it'll shoot warp lightning out of the sides of its wheels at any infantry around it. So that is pretty cool. Armor piercing damage as well. So explosive and missile armor piercing. And it has a alright charge bonus. If it does get into melee combat, it can still hold its own at 280 weapon strength, but there is only one unit of it, so I wouldn't recommend getting it caught, or it can be taken down quite quickly. Best used as a chariot, unless you want to, first of all, sit it still and shoot something, and then run it away and charge it through things. Yeah, so it can still shoot at medium range, it's good at that, but then it's also fast moving, it can get away and rip through infantry. So that's a brief summary of each of the races as I know them so far. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll be streaming and putting a lot more videos out on Total War Warhammer 2 in the future. If you want to join me in any battles, say custom battles or quick battles, I'm happy to do that. I'm looking for people to play with, so hit us up, send us a message, and we'll see what we can do. I hope you've enjoyed. There'll be multiplayer battles coming soon, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with them, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.